All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War, that famous red telephone. But trust me, you're going to want to stick around, because the real story is way more interesting than anything you've seen in the movies.
So think about it for a second. When you imagine a tense standoff between the US and the Soviet Union, what's the very first image that pops into your head? For so many of us, thanks to spy thrillers and historical dramas, it's a very specific object. I bet it's this, right? A bright red, almost menacing phone sitting right there on the president's desk. We've seen it everywhere, from Stanley Kubrick's classic movie Dr. Strangelove to countless other films and books. It's the ultimate symbol of a world just one button push away from total annihilation. But what if I told you?
That's right. The iconic red telephone is a complete and total myth. There was never a red phone, and for a very long time it wasn't even a phone at all. So where in the world did this idea come from, and what was the reality?
Well, the idea of a physical red phone was a stroke of genius. For fiction, anyway. I mean, red is the color of emergency, of urgency, of stop. It was the perfect visual shortcut for filmmakers to instantly scream high-stakes drama. But reality, as it usually is, was driven by something much more pragmatic, and honestly, much more terrifying.
Let's rewind the clock to 1962. The entire world basically held its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis. This was a genuine moment where nuclear war didn't just feel possible, it felt imminent.
For 13 terrifying days, Washington and Moscow were locked in a nail-biting standoff. And this crisis exposed a huge, terrifyingly dangerous flaw in global politics. The two most powerful people on Earth couldn't actually talk to each other quickly or clearly.
And this is where it gets really scary. Just how fragile the whole system was. Messages had to be passed through all these different diplomatic channels, a process that could take hours. There was a massive risk of a single word being mistranslated or a tone being misinterpreted, which could have accidentally picked off a global catastrophe. Everyone realized something had to change, and fast.
And this brings us to the formal solution. In June 1963, the two superpowers signed an agreement to create what was officially called the Direct Communications Link, or DCL. Its entire reason for being was to prevent a war based on a simple mistake, but how it worked is probably the most surprising part of this whole story.
So, if it wasn't a red phone, what was it? Well, the answer was a technology that seems almost ancient to us now, but it was chosen for a brilliant and very, very deliberate reason.
The first hotline was a teletype machine. You can think of it as a highly secure, super important typewriter that sent encrypted text messages over a cable. No voice, no shouting, just a clatter of keys typing out messages that could decide the fate of the world.
And this slide right here perfectly explains the genius behind that decision. Just imagine the US president and the Soviet premier both exhausted and stressed on a crackly voice call. An angry tone or a bad translation could be disastrous. The teletype forced them to slow down and think. It gave both sides time to compose their thoughts, translate them accurately, and create a clear, unambiguous written record. The key takeaway here is they intentionally chose clarity and thoughtfulness over the speed and emotion of a phone call.
And the myth-busting just keeps on coming. The American terminal wasn't even in the White House. It was in the Pentagon, staffed around the clock by military personnel. The president would give the message, and they would type it, encrypt it, and send it. And of course, the machine itself was just a standard, boring gray.
Of course, the technology couldn't stay stuck in 1963 forever. The DCL has been continuously updated to make sure it's always the most secure and reliable link it can possibly be.
The original cable was backed up with satellite links in the 70s just to be safe. In the 80s, they upgraded to high-speed fax machines, which was a big deal because it let them send things like maps or charts. And since 2008, the hotline has been a highly secure computer link, pretty much a direct encrypted email channel between the two governments.
So, this system, born from a moment of crisis, has had a profound, real-world impact. This thing wasn't just for show. It became an absolutely vital tool for managing global tensions.
The hotline was used during several major crises. During the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War, it helped the superpowers communicate their intentions clearly to avoid being dragged into a regional conflict. It was also used during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Each time, it served its primary purpose, preventing a catastrophic miscalculation.
So, the true legacy here isn't a dramatic red phone, but a quiet, considered system that provided a space for clarity right in the middle of chaos. It was a tool of de-escalation that, while we can never know for sure, may very well have saved the world by stopping simple misunderstandings from spiraling into all-out war. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In our world of instant messages, live video, and immediate reactions, there's a powerful lesson in the story of the hotline. What is the value, especially when the stakes are high, of deliberately slowing down, choosing our words carefully, and prioritizing clarity over speed? Definitely something to think about.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.